Welcome. Hold on, I gotta do one more thing. Now, welcome to the Wednesday night Rebel Dharma group. Jason Murphy, glad you're here. Good to see some familiar faces. Well, pretty much all familiar faces. And yeah, so just wanted to thank those of you who attended either online or in person. The oh, there's a bunch of people here. Here we go. Yeah, online or in person. The day long half day we had the other day was great. Really enjoyed it. I think all the people who attended got something out of it. And if you weren't able to attend, um, there we go. If you weren't able to attend, then we'll have another one probably in the next few weeks, at least a month. Let's see, it's beginning of March, so yeah, maybe mid-April or something. We'll have another day long on a Sunday. Um, it's useful to come and to sit in a group weekly, and it's also useful to give yourself, a half day, a few hours out of the week, a full day, a week long, 5 days, 10 days. It's useful to sit longer periods of time to really kind of examine the mind, which is ultimately what the Buddha is asking us to do in our practice, is to first learn to see through the veil of illusion, the getting kind of caught in all of the different ways in which we believe that there's a solid fixed self. We believe that there is a like a aspiring need to constantly achieve. We believe that these are the things that are going to make us happy. And the Buddha is saying, like, that's all just a magic show. And we're getting lost in the illusion, and that the deepest form of happiness really comes from kind of letting it all go and just being with what is. That's one of the ways of kind of breaking down the essence. And then there's become over the last, I don't know, 15 years, maybe 20 years, maybe even longer, but that's about as long as I've been aware of it. This kind of Buddhism as self-help, like there's something wrong with me and I need to meditate to fix what's wrong with me. And I mean, frankly, that wasn't how I got introduced to meditation, but it was. I guess it kind of was, but no one was that wasn't in the common language. I mean, mindfulness wasn't even in the common language, but I did find it useful. It was given some techniques, and then they were useful, so I continued to use them to my benefit. Um, yeah, but I feel like there's like I gave a post today. Put a post before this class. Like, we're not broken. There's nothing to fix. And I think that's so important, to recognize, to see clearly. It doesn't mean that we can't um, enhance certain aspects of our lives, or delve into or soften into some deeper learnings and teachings. I just feel like it's so important. There also, I remember this teaching from years ago. It was just like a teacher. I can't even remember the teacher. I was sitting a retreat, and the teacher said, "We're not broken. We're just disconnected." And that rang so true to me. This idea of all of the causes and conditions that lead us to whatever we're kind of currently dealing with or going through, and to sense into, oh, in what way am I disconnected right now versus broken or disturbed or you know whatever language we want to kind of put on it, whatever problems. In what way am I disconnected? Disconnected from our hearts, disconnected from our truest intention, disconnected from the amazing presence that can be felt if we can just slow it down and bring it in. I've always loved that kind of idea that, of original goodness. It's found primarily within Chinese Buddhism, but it translates through all aspects of Buddhism. And just how counter it is to what we're growing up with here in the West, which is original sin. So this idea for me of actually recovering is recovering that which was once lost, that which has been obscured, maybe through causes and conditions, through traumas, through addictions, through bad behavior, whatever it is, right? So I guess that's kind of my theme for tonight. So let's sit for a bit and maybe do a little bit of reflection on that. I'm actually not going to, I guess I want to hear, is there anyone here for the first time that wants to introduce themselves? All right. Well, welcome. Even if you're new and you don't want to unmute yourself, you're welcome to. All right, so let's, find a posture that's workable, that's sustainable. And I'm just going to give two instructions for you to use or not use. And actually, I'm going to mix it up a little bit, and I'm going to just ring a bell every once in a while as a reminder versus utilizing more instruction. So the bell will be, it's a mindfulness bell as an opportunity or an invitation to come back if you've been lost. And if you haven't, then it's a invitation to perhaps drop a little deeper into what's known here in the present moment. Or it's just a sound that's arising. So work with it as you will. There's two sentences. The first sentence is, breathing in, I calm my mind. Breathing out, I relax my body. Or you can use this mind, this body. And then, as I often do with long instructions, is eventually just dropping it down to just using the word calm on the inhale and relax on the exhale. So let's work with that. Opening to the comings and goings of sound. establishing the mindfulness of the in and out breath. Exploring these two simple instructions. Breathing in, I calm the mind. Breathing out, relax the body. Breathing in, calm. Breathing out, relax. the next time you hear the bell will signify the end of this meditation period. I don't know what it was like inside your heads, but the feeling of the quality of the silence in the room and the stillness was noticeable for me. Not sure about you guys at home. It's always a little challenging when you're at home too. There's other distractions, or dogs, or cats, or people. Foot's falling asleep. All right, so I think just open up for any thoughts, questions, reflections. Please.
Um, I was curious to hear your thoughts maybe on introducing variety into the way that you practice. I for a long time was just kind of stuck with, I guess, kind of maybe what I was first exposed to, which was zazen, and then I guess coming here and things pretty much like similar practice, but maybe a little bit of different flavor. And then um, I also kind of have meditation app
Mm-hmm.
that it's Sam Harris's, and
Mm-hmm.
he actually has like a bunch of different modalities. One of which that I found really useful lately was called the direct approach, and that's pretty different than what I'm used to.
Mm-hmm.
But then even like being at the day long and knowing of my or walking meditation, but then like doing it and like wow, that was actually pretty useful.
Mm-hmm.
And so I mean I feel like the variety has been very helpful to me, but I know that there's a lot of people that kind of just like they got their way of doing it, and they do it over and over.
Mm.
And so just curious to hear what your thoughts about that might be.
Okay. Yeah. Happy to share my thoughts about it. Just to, in case you guys couldn't hear, I know the sound isn't totally ideal, and I'll try to do something to make that better at some point. But he's talking about variety and coming from a kind of a Zazen practice or a Zen practice, and then into Vipassana, but then also exploring um, like different apps and different techniques, and perhaps even kind of meditation modalities. So there's this story I heard once. If you want to find water, you have to dig a deep hole, and that takes persistence. That takes continual effort. That takes patience, and it doesn't matter where you dig as long as it's there's supposedly water. But if you just dig 10 feet down and then move because you're impatient at 10 feet down, then you're never going to hit water. Right? Sometimes they call this the wellspring. And so I feel like that is also true with this practice. In other words, I think it's fine. I think it's good to do variety. You're someone who uh, had established a practice in a particular style, right? Kind of the Zen style. And from what I know about Zen, that's kind of the way they feel, and is to stay with it for a time. And even in the kind of monastic order, and like I was reading this book a little bit, Living Dharma, and I haven't gotten into it a whole lot. Otherwise, um, I would bring up some themes, but here is one theme. Um, it's suggested to stick with a practice for 5 years, and then once you're established in a practice, and even like for the monks that have ordained in Thailand or even around the world, the idea of staying with one teacher at one monastery for 5 years and learning all that there is to learn. And then there's this story also about this monk, this practitioner, who really wanted to go and study with Mahasi Sayadaw in Burma, and they were an Ajahn Chah student. They really wanted to go study with Mahasi Sayadaw, amazing teacher, and this particular technique of mindfulness and concentration, and Ajahn Chah said, that's fine. It had been 5 years. Go ahead. And so this monk went, and they went to train with the famous Mahasi Sayadaw, and stayed there for a few years, and then came back. And then Ajahn Chah said, "Well, what did you learn?" And the monk said, "Not much. Pretty much the same thing I learned here." So I feel like as it's good to establish in a particular, call it a tradition or whatever. I mean, personally, like I've mentioned, I started with Zen, with the Zen practice, just because of happenstance, really. I mean, I guess the truth is I started with a Hindu practice, a kind of pranayama breathing practice. That was probably my first meditation instruction from Dr. Das. And then mindfulness, establishing mindfulness. But really, when I kind of got into, this is like a discipline, and it was, several times, classes, several times a week, sitting for a period of time. Um, it was primarily Zen, which was very little instruction, but still, it was a kind of a view. And I ultimately didn't find that useful when I went to study with some of my current teachers, right, at Insight tradition or Vipassana tradition, Theravadan tradition. Um, there was a little bit more instruction which I needed, and some variation within the Theravadan, which is these heart practices, walking practice, mindful eating. There was, so going on retreat too gave me a opportunity to kind of utilize everyday mindfulness and concentration and some of the different modalities. So within a particular style of Buddhism or whatever, or meditation practice, there is variation. You know, the Buddha gave different instructions to lots of different people based on his kind of intuition of what would be useful for what techniques would be useful for this student. You know, and so I think that it in that way it's good. It's good. So it's good to have an established kind of um, practice, one that you feel like works for you. You've gained some stability of mind, perhaps, and if actually after some time, if it's not working, like chanting for me just wasn't. I loved it. It was, I thought chanting was beautiful, and I loved to hear the voices kind of harmonizing, and that there was some beauty to it. But like Nichiren Buddhism just didn't do it for me, and so I let it go. Or I dabbled in some kind of Tibetan Buddhism, just to kind of see. And, ultimately, there was didn't appeal to me. When in Zen, there was way too much bowing. Like, I mean, just like whatever it was, right there. And so this is what has kind of worked for me. Um, and I feel like there's a lot of variety, actually. And there's, you know, living in America, in the United States at this time in history, there is so much available. And then with the online, right, with the YouTube and the apps and there's so much available. And so that's why I told the story in the beginning about, like, you start to dig for the wellspring, and then you don't hit water right away. You don't hit or whatever it is, right? And then you move somewhere else, and you move somewhere else, and so then one will never get it. They'll just be digging holes and wasting a lot of effort and energy. Um, so that's why I like this. I like the idea of finding what works and then diving deep with it for a time, really exploring all the aspects of it. And then the story of the monk that wanted to go travel with Mahasi Sayadaw to learn something new and different, and then Ajahn Chah was like, "Yeah, go ahead, and come back and tell me what you learned, right?" And he said, wherever it's pretty much the same. It's different slight techniques. But I think it's good to be open-minded, and definitely not like this is the only way. Um, you know, in Buddhism, there is a kind of a theme of this is the only way to free your hearts and minds. And what that means is what I started with: examining the mind, calming the mind and body, gaining awareness, gaining insight is the only way to free one's heart mind from suffering. Not this technique is the only way. It is my critique of S.N. Goenka, who's no longer with us, but there's still a Goenka ism that's out there. And S.N. Goenka was the student of U Ba Khin, and U Ba Khin was a Burmese kind of master, meditation master, who's actually in this book, and had some very great practices. But what I noticed and I went to go sit because I was curious. So I went to go sit what Goenka style calls Vipassana instead of Vipassana. It's just a translation difference, but it's how I can tell that, oh, this is someone who is indoctrinated into this one understanding. And when I went there, I found that they were extremely rigid. This is the only way to the pure path, to the pure mind. And that totally turned me on. Because yoga is also a way to the wellspring. And concentration meditation is also a way to the wellspring. The wellspring is Dharma, the truth that's revealed through calming, establishing mindfulness, developing concentration, and seeing the mind clearly, and seeing the world clearly. And so, from the Buddhist perspective, and my opinion is, it kind of doesn't matter which path you take; they're all going to this, or where you dig the hole. You're gonna eventually find water, or hit the wellspring, unless you're in the desert. And even there, maybe it just might take longer. So hopefully that was helpful, Adam. Definitely a long-winded way to answer your question. Other thoughts, questions, reflections? I guess to further answer that question, or just for further reflection, and I was thinking this earlier. There's all of these different types of what we call Buddhism, and then there's things that aren't Buddhism. And so, from the Buddhist perspective, the kind of this is the only way means that follow a path or a practice that understands the three characteristics and explains the three characteristics of existence: that there is suffering, that impermanence exists, and we're reminded of it at every moment, every breath, and that there is no fixed and permanent self. That these are the three characteristics of existence taught within Buddhism. Clear, understand that. The Four Noble Truths, right, and the Eightfold Path that is connected to the Four Noble Truths. Any practice that incorporates these things, these teachings, is considered Buddhism. But there's lots of variation around that. I was actually just having a conversation earlier today with someone who is a Vedanta practitioner. Vedanta is like this hybrid of Buddhism and, well, it's often called non-dual Buddhism. But in my view, it is a mix, which happened a lot in India, of Buddhist principle and Hindu principle kind of blended together. Right? This idea where Atman, which is what the Buddha basically just kind of debunked, the Atman, which means soul, basically. That's the variation, that's the difference. But in this discussion, we were talking about, and they were saying like, Atman is Brahman, and Brahman is me. So this idea of like, if there is a soul, this soul is ultimately a piece of God consciousness, and I am God consciousness. And then I said the difference between Buddhism and what you just said is the term I am. Oh, is that right? All right. I never heard that one. But that's the difference. Yeah. I am. When there's an I am, then there's ego. And when there's ego, then there's suffering, ultimately. And so non-dualist thinking, non-dualist kind of thought is that there is no separation of I am. So just even this idea of Atman or soul is very selfish. And we're fucking selfish. And that's the cause of our suffering. So you want to stop suffering, learn to be selfless. And that's what anatta means, basically, selfless. It often gets translated as no self or no soul, because it's a direct separation, or a direct it's a juxtaposition to Atman. But it's actually more like selflessness, or I think Zen does a good job of saying emptiness. And that's actually a kind of that term confuses people. Emptiness. Wait, what? Basically, nothing has real essence to it that is separate from anything else. Emptiness. Everything is empty. And it even, I mean, I'm still not fully clear about that, but I can say now with a lot more confidence, oh, I understand what that means. I still fall into selfishness and self-centeredness and craving. And there's this way that in Buddhism they talk about that it's like it's self-ing. So there's layers of creating that we've done for our whole lives. And it's not our fault. We actually were selfless when we were born. We were, as babies, there was no separation between our parents and us, the pacifier, the crib, the food. It was just all entering and leaving into conscious awareness, and then disintegrating into nothingness. And then there would be another thing that would be into consciousness. And then as we've grown, as we're growing, and because our parents, put all kinds of you're you and I'm me and you're a cute baby and I'm your parent, and we need that because we have to have a strong sense of self to be able to get to the point of not self. That's a please.
Well, I find that when I'm dealing with the upsetting events or trauma, meditation is really helpful. And but I still feel like I'm not as like fully present in the meditation. I keep drifting back into like repeating the upsetting events. So, but it still sort of breaks it up a bit. Do you think that there's like one thing that would be most helpful to do, like focusing on the breath, or just trying to pay attention to sensations in order to like focus more? What would be the ideal meditative state to
Mm.
try to get back to, like when you hear the bell, for
Mhm,
example?
mhm. So when I was ringing the bell, would that help you?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So kind of because it's grounding, right? Yeah. Great question. Thanks for asking it, and the vulnerability in asking the question. Um, and I just want to repeat for those of you. So she was talking about, during meditation, finding meditation to be useful, and helping kind of ground and work with some traumatic, kind of memories and whatnot. And sometimes, and I find this to be really true, and this is a big warning sign around people that have untreated trauma going on kind of long meditation retreats without having some support. I think that's changed a lot over the years. But anyway, I don't want to keep going. So then the question was, is there something that can be useful around that, like breath or body or sensation? And I mean, and the answer is what works for you, you know, because whether it's a traumatic thought or just a thought, it's the same process. My experience, though, is that traumatic memories have more weight because they're also in our limbic system. And our limbic system and our lizard brain is saying, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget. And you start to get calm and peaceful. Don't forget. This happened. Never let this happen again. So, hence hypervigilance or anxiety, right? And that's I don't totally know, and I don't know that a lot of, I mean, I've heard, there's lots of different opinions about it, but I don't totally know why that is, but Sigmund Freud, so fucking long ago, called it repetition compulsion, and there's some truth to that in the way that we we are in a compulsive way we repeat so that we can protect ourselves. It's a form of self protection, but it outserves its usefulness, like so many of our thoughts and behaviors. Anxiety is actually fairly useful, can motivate us, can get us to do things, to complete tasks. But over the overextension of anxiety leads to neuroticism and physical sensation, physical ailments, accelerated stress, heart rate, immune deficiencies. There's all kinds of issues. Same thing with trauma. So I would guess that the breath might be too subtle. That it might be too subtle if the repetition compulsion of traumatic memory or flashback is strong. And and since sound, so then maybe cueing into sound here and now. And if that doesn't work, then yeah, sensations in the body really helpful. And what I love about like EMDR, for example, EMDR uses tapping. So just this is a very grounding, and Bob won't like this on my thighs, a very grounding practice, and it can be really very useful during meditation. And if you're sitting alone, if you're in a room full of people, maybe that'd be weird, you know. But the other thing that that I learned is this: just because it is both bilateral stimulation and mindfulness, it's quieter. So that's a couple options. Um, Holding on to something that's kind of grounding, that's metal or that's heavy, like a rock or something, can also be really useful. So the grounding technique, because, and I think this can be true not just for trauma, but for many of the mood or mental disorders that people are afflicted by, finding ways to ground. This is like in the Buddha story when he's attacked by Mara, the onslaught of Mara, right? Greed, hatred, and then doubt or delusion. In that, actually, I guess it would be desire or craving, ill will, and doubt are really what the Buddha was combating. And in the story, that's like there's, dancing topless women with like, platters of food, and, that's the temptation, right? And then there's the, demons and gargoyles, hucking spears and arrows, and that's the ill will. And then there's the, what gives you the right? You don't deserve to be happy. Maybe you guys have heard that before in your own mind. You don't deserve to have good things happen to you. Because remember that time and you did and there was that, and those people said all of that. And so I feel like the psychological kind of twist there is that the Buddha in the story is really just working with the hindrances that we all experience. It's just they're personified and they've been, kind of sensationalized, like a movie. So I lost my thought for a second. So there's this image, it's widely spread, it's called the earth touching gesture. And there's two pieces about it. One, in Thailand, and in Thai Buddhism, the earth touching gesture brings in the sacred feminine, which I just love. And in other parts of Buddhism, it is this grounded. When the Buddha is confronted by Mara, right, the personification of greed, hatred, and delusion, and basically at the end, it's like the end of the game, the big boss. At the end of the game, you gotta fight every level, and the bosses get harder and harder and harder, and then there's the big boss that you gotta take out, and it's challenging. So the big boss Mara is saying, what gives you the right? What makes you think that you deserve to have this kind of insight, to escape from samsara? Why should you be able to do that? And if you think about it, most of us, even people who have been meditating for years and years, have something in their minds that says enlightenment's not really possible. And that's that doubt. That basically in the moment before his enlightenment, the last hurdle, the last kind of struggle. And then the Buddha reaches towards the earth and like grounds himself and is like, this is fucking intense. This is my interpretation, obviously. This is fucking intense. And I need to just like ground myself and feel the earth. And he recalls the earth being a support for him. And he recalls all of the times it's in Thailand there is a water tradition that that as a that there's an offering to give water to the earth, to the plants, and even food, like the leftover food in a monk's bowl, is thrown out for the animals. That's something that I witnessed tons, and I've been in lots of water ceremonies, and so the Buddha to be, or the Buddha to be was basically like recalling all of the times that they had given this offering. So the generosity of their intention. And then in Thai Buddhism, in this moment, the earth goddess comes up out of the ground with long black hair and squeezes all of the water of offering and washes Mara away and says, I am, this is the evidence that you deserve to be fully awakened. Nowhere else in the world of Buddhism does that take place besides in Thailand. For a long time, that image was going to be my back piece, but it's way too complicated. I had one person draw it up, but I couldn't do it. So, anyway, grounding is super important. And however we can feel grounding, and sometimes that means, like I said, like tapping, and sometimes that means walking. Walking meditation can be really helpful for that kind of grounding. Holding something, hearing a bell. Another intervention that I utilize a lot for all what can be afflictive thoughts, traumatic or run of the mill, is to just tell your mind, not now. Not now. And then back to the breath or the body sensation. Just like, not now. Not never, but not now. And then, there's also some therapeutic process of examining out of meditation, examining what is happening here with this reoccurring thought. And even asking, what are you trying to do for me? How are you helping me? Just like asking, confronting your mind. This is the third foundation of mindfulness. And not confronting it in a punitive way. Like I've literally had people write letters to their traumatic memories. Thank you, or the part of them that has been hypervigilant or anxious. Thank you for keeping me safe for this long. Just like acknowledging that it's necessary. It was necessary. And now it's no longer necessary. I have enough strength now. Or whatever, however it is, for different people, it's different. I realize I'm getting a little therapeutic, but this is Buddhist psychology. thoughts, questions, reflections? I was going to read a list. We can call it the promises. Promises found in Buddhism. I several years ago, I was formally trained in what's called mindfulness-based stress reduction, and found it to be very useful. And it is primarily what has been utilized as the research-based, evidence-based practices that started the wave of mindfulness in our everyday language, because it wasn't just some weird Buddhist thing anymore. The word mindfulness, by the way, sati, means to remember. So to remember or remember, reconnect, or to remember here, to come back when the mind wanders off, recognizing, remembering, oh yeah, here, this breath. That's why we're using meditation objects like the breath or the body or sound, because it's here. So that's, and then, there's some other, like, people can riff off of, oh, what does that mean to remember? Well, maybe it also is where I started, to remember our original goodness, to remember, to not get lost in the selfish and self-centered, um, you know, conditioning that since we were, 18 months or a year, I don't even know. I don't even know when it really starts. It starts pretty early. This separation. But yeah, it's another way of talking, or that idea of recovering. Noah talks a lot about um, this is it's like an archaeological dig. We're looking for artifacts of not self or selflessness or emptiness. And sometimes to understand, we need to look back and not carry it with us. Look back, see it clearly for what it is, and then let it go. All right, so in mindfulness-based stress reduction, they did this, this like, I think it's like a 17-year study or something like that of the benefits of meditation, right? And there's all these, like, Judy and I were talking before, there's all these like scientific, and you get, thicker gray matter, and your synaptic gap is like smaller, and you get like a, thicker myelin sheath, which makes you, kind of more brain power. It's all these things. Strengthens the corpus callosum, which is the connection between the left and right hemisphere, so we can think abstractly and concretely better. There's all these things. So here's the promises. The benefits of meditation: increased self-awareness, trust, and acceptance, enhanced appreciation of life, more accepting attitude to life and challenges, more fluid adaptation to change and development, of more effective coping strategies, lasting decreases in a variety of stress-related physical symptoms, including chronic pain. Significant decreases in anxiety and depression. Improved concentration and creativity. Improved immune system functioning. Just a few of the benefits. And I can actually honestly say I've experienced. I was going to say all, but I have to double check. Yeah, I mean, I think all to varying degrees. And for me, significant decreases in depression, as I've suffered from depression in my life. Anxiety isn't something that I was thought. I don't have that kind of conditioning. So anyway, so keep up the good work. Yay! New baby in the world. Thanks for sharing that. Because life happens. Thank you for your time and attention. Hopefully anything I've said or this practice has been useful or helpful. This center is run on and sustained on the donation of those who attend, as well as my kind of teaching and my practice. So you can donate at Against the Stream, and there's a link for those of you online. And also you can follow me. I did record this, and I will be continuing to record and posting on my YouTube channel, No BS Buddhist. You also, if you want to Venmo me or offer some dana or donation to support my life, my practice, happy to accept that at No BS Buddhist or Jason Murphy Venmo. Yeah, we just had a day long. There's a Memorial Day retreat happening at Against the Stream in Joshua Tree. If you haven't attended, this is like a 3-day meditation retreat. Like perfect. Basically, beginner meditation. Just do it. Just sign up. Just go. Just have a vacation. It's Memorial Day. There's a hot tub. There's a pool. People will cook you food. You'll hear fun and good stories. There'll be some laughter. There'll be some silence. There's some road runners. There's some Joshua trees. Noah sent me a message the other day. I was asking him a question about something, getting his opinion, and he sent me a message back. Love yourself enough. And I was like, oh, damn. Of course. Love yourself enough to go on a meditation retreat. Love yourself enough to come to a day long. Love yourself enough to continue to practice even when it's hard. We dedicate the merit of this practice, this merit of this class, the merit of this teaching to benefit all beings, May all beings do the work that needs to be done to free themselves from suffering, and thus creating a positive change in the world. May we all be free.